One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question. I'm here at the 2018 NCAA convention and I'm joined by Dr. Brian Hainline. Dr. Hainline is currently the Chief Medical Officer for the NCAA. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Ty.
Now, Dr. Hainline, we're just wrapping up the NCAA convention here, and of course one of your primary roles is to have a pulse of what are the concerns and what is on the forefront of medical issues for student athletes in all of NCAA. Can you give us kind of a synopsis of what you're seeing and what you're working on now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the thing that's on the student athlete's mind more than anyone, and even on the coach's mind, is mental health.
Right.
I mean, concussion is the elephant in the room, and I think we're doing incredible research on that with the Department of Defense. But what people think about and what they're concerned about more than anything is mental health of student athletes.
Right. And obviously testing now and actually we see it across all spans, all divisions. How is the NCAA either addressing the issue? How are you working with coaches and athletic directors and trainers and everybody to address on that issue, which is very important?
Yeah, so we've been working really hard on that, and we're actually working with the leading mental health and medical organizations in the country. We put out a document that's at every school, a best practices document, and in that document we actually identify the primary role of the coach in terms of just setting the cultural environment of mental wellness, mental resiliency, and for the coach to let his or her athletes know that seeking mental health care is as appropriate as seeking care for an ankle sprain.
Oh yeah. Right.
And it's a really, really important thing, but not just for someone's well-being, but we also know that mental health affects performance.
Right.
And when you have a depression or anxiety, your ability to perform goes down, or if you're injured, your ability to recover goes way down. So there are all sorts of important reasons. And so what we did actually is we put together a 10-minute teaching module for every single coach in the country.
Okay.
And that's available on our website, ncaa.org/SSI. And it doesn't teach someone how to be an expert, but we think it's really well done, and it just kind of takes the coach right into the heart of how he or she can address mental health issues with athletes.
Which is very important, and I assume something like that, especially coming from your area, probably can be used in high school and across the board.
Yeah, so there's this barrier to accessing mental health, and athletes, they tend to have this sense that they're invincible or that they're tough, or they believe everyone else thinks that way of them, and it starts at the high school level. So for all coaches, just to address it, recognize it, understand it, I think it's going to make the individual a better human being, but I think it's also going to allow the individual to achieve excellence much better.
And this is kind of a best practices training tool for coaches to apply to student athletes or recognize symptoms. How is it structured?
Yeah, so it's two things. One is there's a best practices document that's out there for every single coach and administrator in the country, and that's at every campus. But then in particular, there's just a very simple 10-minute teaching module, and that just gets to the heart of what are the ABCs of addressing mental health. And we're going to take that and we're going to expand on it, but that's sort of phase one for the coaches.
Right. Now, mental health, is there a reporting structure across all of NCAA? How do you record instances and find out how prevalent issues with mental health are within student athletes?
Yeah, so we've done that research with our partners, and what we have found is that there's not a higher prevalence and incidence of mental health among student athletes than students who are not athletes, but they have more specific concerns. And so one of our big jobs is we've gone to all of the NCAA member schools and worked with the counseling services to say, there's a certain cultural difference between being an athlete and not being an athlete, and to understand that there's a uniqueness about that everyone has to address. So we're approaching this from a lot of different points of view. Again, I think the biggest barrier is that people still tend to keep mental health in the closet.
Right, which is a major issue across all of society, actually. In thinking about an athlete and mental health, it seems like there can be two aspects of it, well, more than two, but someone who mental health is actually something that they're probably born with, but in athletics, depending on the leadership and depending how hard you push yourself, it almost seems like you can probably do something to your mind yourself with the expectations you put on yourself and the ups and downs and highs and lows of participating in sport.
So you really hit on the sort of cultural uniqueness of being an athlete, and some are so goal-driven and they're perfectionists, and they identify themselves just as an athlete,
right,
and not as a soulful human being. And then something happens, like it's because of them that a team loses, supposedly, or they get injured, or they get cut, and then who are they? And they don't know who they are, and that's a really slippery slope.
It is,
and we all have to be aware of that. And coaches, I think, especially when you have an athlete who's injured and is away from the team for a little bit, how do you kind of keep that athlete engaged with the team? It's amazing what a difference that makes in recovery.
It does. As a former athlete myself, I understand that it's tough for me and for a lot of people I played with, that transition from knowing yourself as an athlete and really the discipline and the mindset you have as an athlete to where now I have to go find a job. And now I'm in society as quote unquote a civilian, right?
Right.
And I'm not chasing a victory. I'm not working with a team. I mean, all those aspects seem like they can have effect on someone's mindset. And if it's not addressed, I guess it can grow and can compound to where it may become a dangerous situation if it's not addressed.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think for coaches who can be perfectionists as well, and they're very goal driven, of course, but to let the athlete know that it's okay if you fail, so long as you learn from that and pick yourself back up, and it's okay not to be perfect. But most importantly, that the athlete trusts you that if he or she really is feeling down or blue or, God forbid, suicidal, that you're an empathetic voice who cares. And that, and so what the thing that we think is probably the most important of everything is that at the very beginning of the season, the coach meets with all the athletics healthcare people, the team physician, the athletic trainer, but they identify at the front end any sort of plan for working through mental health issues, whether it's a routine issue or an emergency issue.
Just have a plan in play, like anything else, right?
It's like anything else.
Similar to the training you have to do with when learning CPR or using an AED.
Yeah, so automatic external defibrillation, or being trained when there's 3 seconds to go in a game, and you got to put out this. If you don't rehearse it,
exactly, you're not going to
pull it off. And so, if you don't rehearse an emergency action plan for a student athlete who is suicidal, when it happens, it's a problem.
You got a big problem, and of course, research shows that something along those lines, or suicide, can lead to a bunch of other ripple effects throughout campus or throughout society. So you try to prevent that as much as possible. Well, I'll ask one final question here. A long time I worked with you at the American Football Coaches Association, and there have always been 1, 2, or 3 things that are the major issues that you're focusing on. What are those 2 or 3 or 4 things that you're focusing on right now?
So concussion is a big one. And with the Department of Defense, we actually are moving into our 4th year of the largest concussion study ever done in the history of concussion, by many, many-fold, over 20-fold. So that's going to present some really good results. Mental health, as we discussed, and another really emerging topic that's a hot topic is sleep.
Oh, sleep. That's probably across the country and nation and world, right?
Yeah, you know, it's amazing. Most physicians don't ask their patients about their sleep history, but sleep deprivation is a huge predictor of cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. It's a huge predictor of poor performance, and it's a huge predictor of mental health problems. So we're going to be presenting to the membership sometime in the next 6 months all of the results from a sleep summit that we just put together. And one other, another sort of emerging topic is wearable technologies.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know, what's the science of that versus the hype?
Right.
And the science right now is way behind the hype, but we're really keeping an active eye on that, and actually we're going to have within the next year a wearable technology summit with the world's experts.
Oh, okay.
So we'll have something to present to the membership on that as well.
And that'll be excellent information. Can you give us that website again where you said a lot of this information is housed?
Yeah, so it's ncaa.org/SSI for Sports Science Institute. And on that, it has all of the work that we're doing, and especially it has that module on mental health specifically designed for coaches.
Which is very important. Well, Dr. Hainline, I certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you have meetings to go to stop by and talk to us here at One Question.
Well, my pleasure, Ty. Always good to see you.
Yes, sir. That was Dr. Brian Hainline. He's the Chief Medical Officer at the NCAA, and this is Ty Brown with One Question. Now, keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.